The alarm didn't scream, it whispered. A single, high-pitched tone that turned every head in the Combat Information Center. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips as the radar contact materialized on her display like a digital ghost clawing its way out of the electromagnetic spectrum. The numbers made her breath catch. Mach 1.4 and accelerating. Closing rate 1 mile every 3 seconds. Distance shrinking fast. But it was the blank space where the transponder code should have been that sent ice water through her veins. No identification, no radio contact, just a screaming phantom bearing down on them at supersonic speed, with what every instinct in her body recognized as hostile intent. 80 nautical miles from Crimea, deep in waters that Moscow claimed as their own, the USS Gravely had just become prey. Or so the Russian pilot thought. What he didn't know, what his outdated intelligence couldn't tell him, was that he wasn't hunting a lone destroyer. He was flying straight into the jaws of something far more terrifying, an invisible web of American technology that had been watching him since before he'd even climbed into his cockpit. The countdown had already begun, and Major Viktor Kuzmin had less than 60 seconds to realize his catastrophic mistake. The date was unremarkable. The time just past 10:47 in the morning, but the location told a different story. 80 nautical miles from the Crimean Peninsula, the USS Gravely DDG-107, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, was executing what the Navy calls a freedom of navigation operation. To Moscow, it was something else entirely, a provocation, an insult, a violation of what they considered their sovereign waters. The tension in these waters wasn't theoretical, it was palpable, electric, a digital powder keg where every radar sweep and radio transmission carried the weight of potential escalation. The Russian pilot's voice crackled through the emergency maritime frequency, dripping with barely controlled aggression. "American warship, you are violating the Russian defense zone. Turn back now or be destroyed." The threat hung in the air like smoke, theatrical and dangerous in equal measure. But Major Viktor Kuzmin, the cowboy pilot behind the controls of his Sukhoi Su-30 SM flanker, call sign Red 32, had just made a catastrophic miscalculation. He thought he was facing a lone destroyer, isolated and vulnerable in waters far from friendly support. He was about to discover how spectacularly wrong he was. Deep in the Gravely's Combat Information Center, a steel-gray sanctuary of tactical displays and humming electronics, the true nature of modern naval warfare was about to reveal itself. The moment Kuzmin's powerful BARS radar went active, establishing what military tacticians call a fire control lock, the universal signal that weapons employment is imminent, the destroyer's Aegis combat system didn't panic, it didn't hesitate, it simply calculated. In less than 400 milliseconds, faster than a human can complete a single breath, the system had processed the threat, analyzed 18 different intercept solutions, and prepared its response. The deep, automated voice of the Aegis announced with mechanical certainty, "Target classified, weapons solution available." This was the moment where technology met psychology, where silicon superiority confronted flesh and blood arrogance. What Kuzmin didn't know, what his outdated mission briefing had failed to capture, was that he wasn't just being tracked by the Gravely's N-Spy-1D radar. His aircraft had been under observation since before he'd even climbed into his cockpit that morning. 24 hours earlier, a U.S. Air Force SBIRS space-based infrared system satellite had detected the heat signature of his Sukhoi Su-30 SM's engines during pre-flight startup at a Russian base near Novorossiysk. That thermal bloom, captured from 400 miles above Earth, had been the first link in an unbreakable kill chain. The intelligence fusion that followed was the stuff of science fiction made real. Synthetic aperture radar imagery from a KH-11 spy satellite had confirmed Red 32's full combat loadout, 2 R-77 active radar homing missiles and 2 R-27 ET extended-range infrared missiles, all capable of striking the Gravely in under 90 seconds. This data, encrypted and compressed, had flowed through the military's jam-proof space-to-ground network and arrived in the Gravely CIC not as a warning, but as a complete fire control solution. Flight path predicted, maximum speed calculated, weapon release envelope mapped with surgical precision. But the real revolutionary advantage wasn't visible on any radar screen. 300 miles away, over Romanian airspace, an E-2D Advanced Hawkeye early warning aircraft was painting the entire Black Sea theater with its powerful NPY-9 UHF radar. Through the Link 16 tactical data network and the cooperative engagement system, the Hawkeye's crystal-clear radar picture was being fed directly into the Gravely's Aegis combat system. The destroyer wasn't tracking Red 32 with its own radar at all. It was seeing through the Hawkeye's eyes, maintaining complete electronic silence while still possessing perfect situational awareness. To Kuzmin, the American ship appeared passive, possibly even unaware. In reality, it was watching him every move with omniscient clarity.
This was the new mathematics of naval combat. One Russian pilot versus an integrated network spanning sea, air, and space. It was never going to be a fair fight. At 10:48:12, Red 32 crossed an invisible threshold, 20 nautical miles from the Gravely, the range at which Aegis classifies an incoming contact as a high-value threat. Chen's order was crisp and professional. Set Condition 1 Zulu. Weapons free. Engage on my command. The ship surged forward to 28 knots, cutting through the dark waters with renewed purpose. In the vertical launch system cells embedded in the destroyer's deck, a standard missile tube Block 3A, 15 feet of high explosive fury capable of accelerating past Mach 3.5, stood ready. Its digital launch sequencer had already armed. The computer calculated a 99.8% probability of kill. One command from Chen and Kuzmin's $50 million fighter would become an expanding cloud of debris. But that command never came. What happened next would redefine electronic warfare engagement protocols for the entire theater. At 10:48:20, as Kuzmin's radar shifted into continuous target illumination mode, the final step before missile launch, the Gravely's AN-SLQ-32V electronic warfare suite registered the threat. At 10:48:25, with Red 32 now just 8 nautical miles out and dropping to 100 feet above the waves in preparation for a simulated gun run, Kuzmin expected panic. He expected the Americans to break radio silence, to swerve desperately, to flood the frequencies with warnings and pleas. Instead, he got something far worse: silence. Professional, technological silence. Then his world exploded into chaos. At 10:48:27, Chen gave the order that would haunt Russian tactical aviation planners for years. Initiate full-spectrum EW. Launch Nulka. The Gravely's electronic warfare system unleashed a precisely calibrated burst of high-powered, digitally encoded electromagnetic energy. This wasn't crude jamming, it was surgical spoofing, digital deception at its most sophisticated. Kuzmin's cockpit displays didn't go dark. Instead, they lied to him with perfect conviction. His radar suddenly painted the Gravely as a massive phantom target 10 miles to the south, while simultaneously displaying 12 incoming Mach 3 missiles from the north. None of it was real. All of it was terrifying. Simultaneously, a 7-foot rocket-propelled Nulka decoy launched vertically from the destroyer's deck, hovering 100 feet above the waves and transmitting a radar signature 100 times larger than the Gravely itself. The message was devastatingly clear. We see you. We have defeated your radar lock. We have decoys already airborne for any missile you might launch. Your entire mission profile has been countered before you even began. At 10:48:30, with Red 32 just 5 nautical miles out, Kuzmin broke. His sophisticated fire control radar was drowning in phantom contacts. His primary target had apparently teleported to an impossible location. His training kicked in. If the radar picture is unreliable, any missile launch risks fratricide. The fear in his voice was unmistakable as he screamed into his radio, "Bogey! Bogey! System failure! Aborting!" The Su-30SM's engines shrieked as Kuzmin pulled into a desperate 8G climb, fleeing the electronic hell the Americans had conjured beneath him. The engagement was over. The real victory was just beginning. As Kuzmin's fighter disappeared to the northwest, its pilot rattled and its mission obliterated, the Gravely's electronic warfare systems continued their silent work. Every second of Red 32's radar emissions had been captured, frequency hopping patterns, pulse repetition intervals, the precise moments when the Russian systems collapsed under American electronic attack. All of it logged, time-stamped, encrypted, and forwarded to U.S. Cyber Command via satellite uplink. The Navy had just conducted a non-kinetic kill, trading zero physical damage for an intelligence windfall worth millions. Russia's attempt to test NATO's defensive posture had become an unintentional gift, a complete technical blueprint for defeating the Su-30SM and every system in its electronic warfare suite.
The crew of the Gravely stood down from general quarters, adrenaline giving way to quiet, professional satisfaction. They hadn't just defended their ship, they had redefined the rules of engagement for the entire Black Sea. No shots fired, no lives lost, but the message delivered was unmistakable. In the modern battle space, information dominance trumps kinetic firepower every single time. This encounter crystallizes the fundamental transformation in military power projection. Kuzmin's Su-30SM, a Mach 1.5 weapon platform representing decades of Soviet and Russian aviation engineering, had been rendered strategically impotent because it operated on an outdated paradigm. He believed in platform superiority, the idea that the fastest, most maneuverable, most heavily armed fighter would dominate any engagement. But he wasn't fighting a ship, he was fighting a system of systems, a kill chain that stretched from satellites in orbit to aircraft over Romania to a destroyer in the Black Sea, all sharing data at the speed of light and processing threats with artificial precision no human brain could match. The lesson is stark and unforgiving. Never engage in a technology war with an opponent who wrote the rulebook. The U.S. Navy's integration of space-based sensors, airborne early warning, tactical data networks, and Aegis baseline combat systems has created an information-centric war machine that detects, predicts, and preempts threats before enemy pilots even realize they're being tracked. Kuzmin's fate was sealed the moment his engine started that morning, because the Americans already possessed a complete, actionable fire control solution hours before he reached the horizon. This wasn't a close call. This was a professional, cold-blooded demonstration of deterrence. The American response carried an implicit promise. If you try to exploit the seams in our defenses, you will discover there are no seams, only an unbreakable net woven from technology, training, and tactical superiority. The question isn't whether older, non-integrated Russian platforms can compete against this level of electronic warfare capability. The question is whether any adversary can afford to test that capability a second time, knowing what happened to the first pilot arrogant enough to try. Welcome to the new era of naval warfare, where the fastest draw belongs not to whoever fires first, but to whoever processes data better. The implications of this encounter extend far beyond a single humiliated pilot limping back to base. Within hours, the intelligence collected from Red 32's electronic emissions had been analyzed, cataloged, and distributed across the entire U.S. Navy fleet. Every destroyer, every cruiser, every carrier battle group now possessed the exact electronic fingerprint of Russia's most advanced radar systems under stress. The playbook had been rewritten in real time. Future encounters would be even more one-sided, the American advantage compounding with every engagement, every test, every failed provocation. And somewhere over the Black Sea, as Major Kuzmin filed his after-action report, he surely realized the bitter truth. He hadn't been defeated by superior weapons or better training. He'd been defeated by an opponent who saw the entire battlefield while he could barely see past his own canopy. In the cold calculus of modern warfare, ignorance isn't just dangerous, it's fatal. Back aboard the Gravely, as the crew secured from general quarters and the adrenaline faded into exhausted relief, Lieutenant Commander Chan allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. The digital warfare they'd just executed wasn't science fiction, it was the new reality.
Every sensor, every satellite, every data link working in perfect harmony to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The Russians had brought a fighter jet to a network battle. They'd brought swagger and intimidation to a chess match played at the speed of light. And they'd learned in the most humiliating way possible that in the 21st century battle space, the side that controls information controls everything. The seas belong to those who can see furthest, think fastest, and strike with precision before the enemy even knows the game has begun.